Hello, hello. This is Rachel Matta coming to you live from KHTS Radio. I am here today with Santa Clarita Congressman Mike Garcia. How are you doing today, Congressman?
Hey, Rachel, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Of course, I'm glad to hear it. So, it's a new year and we are officially seeing an inflation of at a 39-year high. It seems like we're constantly seeing an increase from gas prices to insurance rates to daily household expenses. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means to you and how you're planning to combat that issue?
Yeah, and unfortunately, this is one of these really evil dynamics. Inflation doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care if you're having a hard time. This affects literally every American family, and it really affects and impacts most severely the lower income families. Obviously, in California, we're somewhat accustomed to a higher cost of living. We're used to, homes not being less than $500,000. We're used to paying some of the highest taxes and seeing, $4 a gallon gasoline. But what we're seeing now is on a whole new level, and this is actually devastating our families. And everyone has seen it. Whether we've gone to the grocery store and we've purchased, $9 bacon, or we've driven through McDonald's with a family of four and spent $50 on four meals. And obviously at the gas pump, seeing $5, close to $6 gasoline. This is something that is literally eating our lunches right now. And as hard as we've been working for higher wages in California, and we've gotten to a point now where, minimum wage is $15, even that $15 minimum wage it's behaving like $10 an hour because everything is so expensive. So it is a real thing. We have heard from some folks across the aisle and the president's White House here that this inflation problem was transitory, that this was a temporary fluke because of COVID. But the reality is it's actually not. This is permanent, at least for a long while, a couple of years, and it's actually going to get worse. So what I've been doing to combat this has been fighting back against the spending that we've been allowing in Washington, D.C. at the federal levels. In the last 18 months or so, we've authorized something like $8 trillion to be spent on various programs. Some of it was COVID relief, which was needed, but a lot of that were other things. And what this has done is it's put so much cash and liquidity out there on the streets, and we are literally seeing records amount of money in circulation now as a result of these bills. And this is what's driving the inflation problems that we have. So, this is a result of politicians promising great programs and promising to help everyone out on the back of taxpayers. And when we spend money that we don't have, and now our government is now $29 trillion in debt, it is what we get. This is inflation is the result of all of these things. So we've got to fight the spending problem that we have. We've got to start saving money. We've got to be more responsible with our precious taxpayer dollars. And we've got to allow businesses to open back up, allow workers to go back to work, children back in school, and eventually this will subside. But unfortunately, this is an inflation problem that's going to be around for a while. We're going to see interest rates go up as well because of that. So a lot of us saw this coming, but it's basically a tax, right? And when we see the price of goods go up 30 to 50%, that is effectively a tax on all Americans, and we've got to be able to fight this.
Absolutely. This is definitely a long-standing issue that is incredibly complex and unfortunate. How would you advise viewers to handle this issue?
Well, I think we've got to hold politicians accountable, and there is a progressive movement right now that wants to give free things to everyone using federal or state tax dollars. And when we elect officials who want to raise our taxes and then come up with these massive spending plans with no real way to pay for it, this is unfortunately what we get. In California, right now, especially in California, we've got a governor who has dialed up our taxes to record levels. He is at the state level seeing massive revenue levels coming into our state from taxpayers. He's claiming a $30 billion surplus Yet now he's still talking about giving free stuff to all Californians and then also raising our taxes an additional $1,200 a month. $1,200 a year for the average family. So this is the cycle that we get stuck in, and we've got to just always be mindful that whenever we're promised something by the federal government, the state government, it's going to come at a cost, and we ultimately as taxpayers are going to pay for it, whether it's directly with tax increases like we're seeing in California, or indirectly with things like inflation, which we're seeing nationwide now. And so there's a clear direct cause and effect and correlation to this irresponsible spending program. I've been a co-sponsor of what we are calling the Balanced Budget Amendment. This is literally an amendment to the Constitution which would require Congress to not spend more than it takes in on an annual basis. And it's a novel idea. It's kind of crazy. We as heads of household, we do this in our everyday lives, but our government for some reason has not adopted this mindset that we've got to spend less than we actually bring in, and this is why we've ended up with a deficit that we have. By the way, it's both parties, right? This isn't a Democrat versus Republican thing. This is both parties are guilty of driving up our nation's debt over the last 20 years, and we've got to stop the bleeding right now. So this balanced budget amendment is very important, and obviously I sit on appropriations committee, which is where we allocate all the funding from the federal government through our committee. And I've been pushing back on these massive spending bills that really have no accountability and no purpose, frankly, and ultimately lead to these massive inflation problems as well. So we've got to just keep fighting this fight, hold politicians accountable, and ask that our elected officials treat our taxpayer money like they would treat their own incomes and not drive our country into bankruptcy.
Absolutely, that's a great point. If you're just joining us, this is Rachel Matta with KHTS Radio, and we are currently live here with Congressman Mike Garcia. Congressman, I hear that North Korea has just launched its fourth hypersonic missile launch in just 2 weeks. How are you feeling, and should we be concerned?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a massive problem. It's getting some headlines right now, but to be honest, it's not getting the attention that it needs to and deserves. This is in addition to what China has done. If you recall, I think back in November, early December, China had a hypersonic weapon launch that effectively went around the globe. And I was at Raytheon for 11 years where we were working on technology both to, launch hypersonic weapons, but also to defend against hypersonic weapons. So I'm very familiar with this technology in this domain. And we as a nation right now are extremely vulnerable to this technology. And what these hypersonic weapons are, everyone remembers the giant, 70-foot-long intercontinental ballistic missiles from the 80s and 90s, the Cold War. Those still exist. Those big missiles go out into space. They go, they're fast as well, and then they carry nuclear weapons, and they re-enter the Earth's atmosphere, 10,000 miles away. Those are a significant threat as well. But what happens with those is when they go out into space, it's actually a lot easier to track. It's a lot easier to defend against, and it's easier to detect, right, from launch to impact. These hypersonic weapons are different. These hypersonic weapons stay lower in the atmosphere. They fly around 50,000 feet. They go anywhere from Mach 5 to Mach 10, meaning 5 to 10 times the speed of sound. And because they're in the atmosphere the whole time, they're able to maneuver still. They can still, turn left, turn right, make these hard maneuvers, and be very unpredictable. And they're extremely small, which means they're hard to detect, they're hard to track. And in the end, because they're so fast, so small, and they're going to be armed with nuclear weapons, they're very lethal and very difficult to defend against. So the fact that North Korea now has this technology and is being aggressive and not afraid to use it and at least test it should concern us all. And by the way, in our district, in Santa Clarita and the Antelope Valley, right, we are on the target list. We're within range of Chinese hypersonic weapons. We're within range of Chinese intercontinental ballistic missiles. So we should care more, and this is literally a national security debacle right now. This is something that we're not paying attention enough to, and frankly, we're not well defended against. So we've got to pay more attention. We've got to fund these programs both on the offensive and defensive side of things. And frankly, we need our president and our Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense to start, get on the road here and convincing China and North Korea to knock off these programs and begin sanctioning them if they don't stop testing these hypersonic capabilities. These are literally, end of world kind of weapons, day one of the war strike type weapons that will change the balance of World War III if we had one. And would certainly impact California if we ended up in a conflict.
Absolutely. And I'd like to take this opportunity to remind our viewers that we are going to have an article up about this within the next few days. I definitely agree this has not made as many headlines as it deserves because this is such a scary issue for sure. Anyways, in lighter news, I heard that you were recently able to spend the day bringing breakfast to the new Santa Clarita Valley Sheriff Station. Can you tell us a little about that event and how it went?
Yeah, absolutely. What a great day! I think it was last or 2 weekends ago. Now we were celebrating Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. It was a couple Sundays ago, and this is something that on my campaign, our volunteers and I have been very focused on making sure that we're supporting law enforcement, that we're defending the police rather than defunding the police. And I don't think the average American is aware that there is such thing as Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. So we took the time with a dozen or so volunteers from Santa Clarita and the Antelope Valley, and in Santa Clarita we took them breakfast, and in the Antelope Valley we served them lunch. And it's a small gesture, and we've done a lot in the past for our local law enforcement with a lot of volunteer activities. But, it's these small gestures on days where the average person may not understand why we're doing it that matter most to our local sheriffs. And, our local sheriff's department in Santa Clarita is one of the nation's best. They've been working overtime. It's kind of wild, but some of these deputies are working 80 to 100 hours of overtime each month right now because of what's going on. They've lost some folks. They're having a hard time hiring because of everything that's going on. They've got COVID and people calling out sick all the time. So they're working their tails off. They're not complaining. We have professionals who do their job well in Santa Clarita, and it was an honor to be able to just serve them breakfast, just to be in their presence on a Sunday morning when they're still getting moved into their new sheriff's station there. So, we just encourage everyone to respect law enforcement, appreciate them, thank them when they see them, raise their kids to have those same values. And it's amazing the damage that this defund the police movement has had over the last 2 years, but it was real damage, and we've got to now, fix that. And, my political opponent, Christy Smith, was out there marching with BLM, calling to defund the police. And to me, that's just absurd. I don't understand the rationale for any of that. We've got to hold people like that accountable and not let them represent us at any level of government.
Well, it's always great seeing you and your team give back to the community. I know you arrange these projects like every month, and it's always great seeing you all ready to help out the community. If you're just tuning in, this is Rachel Matta with KHTS Radio, and we are currently live here with Congressman Mike Garcia. Congressman, we are coming close to the end of our time here today. Is there anything else you would like to add about what you have in store for the rest of the year?
No, just, obviously it's campaign season. We're out there doing everything we can to help our constituents as well. The number one priority for me right now is taking care of our constituents. So if anyone has any needs with the federal government, whether it's the IRS, Social Security, the VA, getting your passports or visas taken care of, please reach out to us. And in the end, this isn't about politics for me. This is about security. This isn't about the Republican Party or the Democrat Party and all the personalities that those parties come with. This is about making sure that Santa Clarita remains one of the safest cities in the nation, and making sure that we take care of California and that we can continue to live in California and not move to Tennessee or Texas like everyone else is. So I'm committed to making sure we're fighting for lower taxes, safer neighborhoods, protecting our nation against threats like China and North Korea, and doing the right thing in accordance with the Constitution. And that's where my loyalties lie. So it's been a great almost 2 years representing our district, and we are looking forward to doing it again for 2 more years at least, and earning the support of our constituents every time.
Well, Congressman, thank you so much for coming in here today, and thank you to our viewers for tuning in. This has been Rachel Matter reporting, and I hope you all have an excellent rest of your day. Thank you so much.